At 61, they laid me off with a handshake and a box. No speech, no thanks, just silence. That night, I realized I'd spent my whole life being reliable and never once being real. So I drove west with no plan, just me, an old car, and the feeling that I couldn't keep pretending. This isn't a story about finding success. It's about finally walking away. I was 61. I'd been staring out the same windowless cubicle for nearly 4 decades. Accounting manager, insurance firm, New Jersey. I wasn't unhappy exactly, but I wasn't anything. Most days I felt like a man playing a role too long, comfortable enough not to question it. Until the day I did. It wasn't a big moment, no breakdown, no shouting, just stillness and a whisper I couldn't unhear. This isn't a life. This is a rehearsal for one you're never going to start. There's something strange about spending your whole life counting other people's numbers, forecasts, margins, risk models. I was trusted, efficient, and invisible. Not once did I stop to measure my own life, to ask what my days were adding up to. I knew the cost of everything, but not the value. I wasn't building anything. I was maintaining systems, expectations, a version of myself that was never really mine to begin with. Alarm at 6:10, coffee, suit, car, commute, lunch at my desk, home at 6, microwave dinner, TV, sleep, repeat. I wore my routine like armor. It kept everything unpredictable at bay. There was comfort in the loop. No decisions, no questions, just habit. But over time, habit hardened into a kind of quiet paralysis. It's terrifying how long you can live like that. Not unhappy, not fulfilled, just paused. I thought being reliable made me good. I was the guy who didn't complain, who always showed up, who never needed much. But the truth is, I had trained myself not to want too much, because wanting meant risking disappointment. I confused invisibility with humility. I wore it like a badge, but deep down, I knew. I wasn't being noble. I was just trying not to be noticed, because being noticed meant being real, and being real meant being vulnerable. There were things I thought about doing: painting, writing, driving west with no destination. But I always had a reason to wait. More work to do, a mortgage to pay, a meeting next Monday. So the things I almost did stayed just that, almost. I kept telling myself I had time, but I wasn't buying time. I was spending it, passively, one safe decision at a time. And then one day, it ran out. Not all at once, but slowly. Like a light dimming before it goes dark. No one ever tells you how easy it is to disappear in plain sight. You don't need a tragedy, just a long string of safe, sensible decisions. That's how it happens. One small compromise after another. A job that doesn't quite fit, but pays well. A plan you'll get to eventually. A dream that becomes a hobby, then a memory. And before you know it, you've built a perfectly acceptable life that quietly drains you dry. I wasn't miserable, that's the trick. I was just numb, a little more each year, until the man I used to imagine becoming simply faded out of reach. They called it workforce optimization. After 38 years, I was optimized out. No gold watch, no cake, just a 15-minute meeting and a checklist for returning my badge. I walked past my old desk with a cardboard box and a strange mix of shame and relief. I was no longer essential, but for the first time in decades, I wasn't trapped either. It was like someone opened the door to a prison I hadn't realized I was in, and now I had to decide whether to walk out or stay in a cell I'd decorated with routine. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, in silence. No plan, no emails to answer, no reason to wake up early, just the sound of the fridge humming and the tick of the wall clock. I'd never felt that kind of stillness before, not peaceful, not terrifying, just blank. My whole identity had been wrapped up in being useful, predictable, occupied. Now I had none of that. I wasn't a provider. I wasn't busy. I wasn't needed. And without that, I didn't know what I was. When you spend decades performing a role, you start to forget where the role ends and you begin. I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize what I saw. Not because I looked different, but because I'd never really looked before. Not like this. No tie, no plan, just me. I saw an old man with a quiet kind of sadness in his face. And behind that, something else, a hunger, a softness, a question I had buried under meetings and memos. It wasn't too late, but it was getting close. The next morning, I didn't wait for clarity. I packed a bag, left a note on the counter, and got in my car. I drove west. No interviews lined up, no rental booked. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going. I just knew I couldn't keep living someone else's definition of a responsible life. I wasn't chasing a dream. I was shedding a weight. I didn't need to know where I was headed. I only needed to move, to feel the road, to breathe air that didn't smell like deadlines and printer toner. Somewhere past Texas, I realized I wasn't running toward anything. I was slipping out of a skin I'd worn too long. It wasn't some grand search for purpose. It was quieter than that, like loosening a knot that had been tied for decades. The weight I felt wasn't from what I left behind. It was from everything I had carried without knowing. The expectations, the fear of change, the steady, silent erosion of wonder. I wasn't chasing a dream. I was escaping a kind of slow death, the one that sets in when you stop asking yourself what you want and start settling for what's easiest to explain. Arizona doesn't lie to you. The heat, the silence, the endless stretch of sky, it doesn't pretend to be welcoming, but it doesn't hide either. I stopped in a town that barely showed up on a map. One gas station, one diner, some rusting signs and brittle fences. But the land itself felt bare in a way I wasn't used to. Honest, like it had nothing left to prove. I didn't need a new version of my old life. I needed a place that asked nothing of me, a place where I could forget who I was supposed to be and maybe start figuring out who I actually was. I found a trailer down a gravel road. The landlord didn't ask questions. Cash and a handshake. I moved in with just a backpack and a pair of old boots. No internet, no deadlines, just a bed, a window, and air that didn't feel recycled. The first night, I sat on the floor and listened to the wind move through the cracks. I wasn't excited. I wasn't scared. What I felt was something I hadn't allowed myself in years. Space. I didn't know what came next, but for once, that felt okay. I had nothing to do, and that meant anything was possible. For the first few weeks, I didn't do much. I sat on the porch, drank coffee, watched the way light changed across the sand. It felt like failure at first, like I'd given up. But slowly, something shifted. I started noticing the quiet, the small things, the rhythm of my own breath. The absence of noise wasn't empty. It was full of things I'd forgotten how to hear. For the first time in decades, I wasn't performing. I wasn't useful. I was just here. And that stillness, that lack of expectation, it felt like a kind of forgiveness. It happened by accident. I wandered into town and saw a sign for a mine tour. I didn't have anywhere else to be. The guide was this older guy named Hank, white beard, wide hat, voice like he'd never hurried a day in his life. He didn't talk about history like it was in the past. He told stories like they were still echoing through the tunnels. The tour lasted 2 hours, but it felt like a dream. No performance, no sales pitch, just presence. Watching him, I thought, maybe there's a way to live like that. Quiet. True. Hank saw me listening and told me to come back the next day. I did. Then again. And again. I started helping out, small things at first, holding the lanterns, checking the trail. After a while, I knew the shafts better than the streets. Hank would say, "George, you talk slow. That's good. The rocks don't like to be rushed." He treated the mines like they were alive, like they remembered. And somehow I started to feel remembered too, like I was no longer disappearing into the background of my own life, like something old in me was waking up. They needed someone to fill in. Hank had a doctor's appointment, and the other guy bailed, so I said yes. My first tour was clumsy. I stumbled over names, forgot dates, lost my place more than once. But something shifted. I stopped trying to sound like a guidebook and just spoke. I talked about silence, about time, about what it means to be forgotten and found again. The mine wasn't just a mine, it was a mirror. And somehow, telling those stories, even imperfectly, felt more honest than anything I'd ever done in a conference room. One day, after a tour, this woman stayed behind. She looked at me and said, "You talk like you're whispering to the rocks." I laughed. But she didn't. She said it felt peaceful. Said it reminded her of her grandfather. A week later, someone else used the same phrase, and then someone printed it on a flyer. "The man who whispers to rocks." It stuck. I never asked for it, but I didn't mind. It sounded strange, sure, but it also sounded like a man who had finally stopped pretending. I liked that more than anything I used to be called. It wasn't the history that brought them back. It was the stillness. The way I spoke, like there was no rush, no angle. Some of them were tourists, but others, you could tell they were looking for something. Not a fact or a photo. Something quieter. I'd see it in their faces, that soft recognition. That ache you carry when you've spent too long trying to be useful. I didn't try to fix anything. I just told the truth about the land, about the men who dug deep and disappeared, about how easy it is to bury yourself and forget you're still alive. Even then, there were moments I doubted it all. I'd wonder if I'd made a mistake, trading a salary and security for solitude. Some nights, I'd lie awake and hear my old boss's voice in my head, talking about market value. But then I'd see a man like I used to be, stiff collar, tight jaw, trapped in a call while the sun set behind him, and I'd remember I didn't walk away from a life. I walked away from pretending. And even when it was hard, even when it was lonely, that choice still felt like the truest thing I'd ever done. The first letter came from a man in Ohio. Said he saw a video someone posted of my tour. Said he cried. Then more came. Emails, postcards, notes left on my trailer door. People I'd never met telling me my story made them breathe differently. Some said they were still stuck, waiting for the right time. I wrote back when I could, told them what I'd learned the hard way. There's no perfect moment, no magical sign. There's only a quiet breaking point, where you either keep lying to yourself or you don't. And when it comes, you'll know. In my old life, everything had a number. Deadlines, bonuses, how many steps I took, how much I saved. Out here, the days melt into one another. And I don't mind. I don't measure my worth by output anymore. I measure it by how often I sit outside just to feel the breeze, by how many people I've made laugh on a tour, by how soft my voice gets when I talk to the mine. There's a peace in letting go of the old scorecard, in not needing to win, in just being and knowing somehow that's enough. People say I reinvented myself. like I changed into a different person. But the truth is, I didn't become someone new. I just stopped pretending. All my life I was trying to match some version of success I never chose. Suits, spreadsheets, polite small talk. None of it ever felt like me. What you hear now, this slower voice, this quieter way of seeing things, it was always there. I just buried it so deep under duty and deadlines, I forgot it existed. It took everything falling apart for me to finally hear it again. And when I did, it sounded like home. This wasn't a fairy tale. I made mistakes, forgot to pay a bill, locked my keys in the truck, once ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere and cried like a child. There were nights I missed conversations so badly it physically hurt. There were months when money was tight and I ate beans out of a can. But even at my lowest out here, I never felt as empty as I did back in that office, surrounded by people, yet vanishing a little more each day. Out here, even when I failed, I was failing as myself. That mattered more than I expected. After a while, I started dreaming about my wife again, not in grief, not as a ghost, but like she was visiting, watching. She didn't speak, but she smiled, and it wasn't the smile from our wedding photos or from our harder years. It was something gentler, like recognition, as if she could finally see me, not the man buried under paperwork and pressure, but the man she always knew I was trying to be. And in those dreams, I wasn't sad. I was known. I like to think she would have liked this version of me. I like to think she already did. I used to live by the clock and the calendar. I used to believe there was an invisible line you had to walk, hit your milestones, stay on schedule, retire with just enough saved to maybe enjoy 5 years before your back gave out. But out here, that whole idea crumbled. No one asked how old I was. No one cared what I used to do. The desert didn't rush me. It didn't reward me either. It just let me be. And I realized maybe that's all I ever wanted. Not achievement, not permission. Just the time and space to exist without keeping score. At some point, it hit me. I was still alive, even though I'd stopped achieving. I didn't need a title. I didn't need to earn 6 figures or meet quarterly goals. I was valuable simply because I woke up and breathed and noticed the light shifting across the rocks. That's not a lesson you learn overnight. It's something that soaks in slowly, the way water disappears into dry earth, invisible but real. And once you feel it, even a little, the way you see the world changes. The way you see yourself changes too. I was enough. I had always been enough. There were moments I thought about going back, getting another job, trying to rebuild what I had. It would have been easier in some ways, familiar, but I didn't. I stayed. Not because it was perfect, it wasn't, but because, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for my real life to begin. It was already happening, slowly, quietly. In every tour I gave, in every still morning, in every evening where I sat outside and just existed. I stayed because, in this strange forgotten place, I was finally remembered by the one person who had forgotten me the most. Me. These days I live in a trailer with a leaky faucet and cabinets that don't quite close. My boots are always dusty. The wind keeps me up some nights. But I wake up with a kind of quiet I never knew I was missing. Back when everything was in order, the job, the mortgage, the polite dinners, I was polished on the outside and crumbling underneath. Out here, I'm not polished. I'm messy, sunburnt, sometimes lonely, but I'm real. I'm free. I didn't plan for this life. I didn't even know how much I needed it. But it turns out I did, more than anything. I used to have a 5-year plan, then a 10-year plan. Every step mapped out, approved, aligned with someone else's definition of success. Out here, I don't have a plan. I don't need one. I count good days, not accomplishments. I measure peace, not progress. My currency is time, not titles. This isn't what the world calls success. There's no ladder here, no applause. But it's something gentler, something that doesn't depend on performance, sufficiency. It's enough. And sometimes, when I'm standing alone in the canyon, with the wind in my face, it feels like more than enough. Time used to feel like pressure, like I was always running behind. A meeting at 10, a deadline at 2, retirement someday, if I could just hang on. But now time feels like space, like something I get to move through, not chase after. I sit, I walk slow, I listen to birds and wind and the occasional tourist who just needs someone to talk to. I have hours where nothing happens, and somehow that feels full. I used to look at the clock and panic. Now I glance at the sun and breathe. This isn't wasted time. It's lived time. If I could go back and whisper one thing to my younger self, it would be this. You don't have to earn your right to rest. You don't have to wait for a breakdown to begin again. No one's going to hand you permission. You just need to notice the moment you start disappearing and listen. I wish someone had told me that decades ago, that it's okay to walk away before the damage is permanent, that it's not quitting to want a life that feels like yours. I thought I was stuck. I wasn't. I was just afraid to listen to myself. I still walk the mines, still lead the tours, still pause at the same bend in the trail where the light always hits just right. I still speak in that slow, quiet way, not because it's dramatic, but because it's honest. That's how the rocks deserve to be spoken to. That's how people deserve to be spoken to. These days, I know I'm not just whispering to the stones. I'm whispering to something else, something buried in the people who show up, who listen, who feel something shift. I whisper to the part of you that already knows. That's ready. If you're watching this and something in you aches, if you feel like the story's already been written and there's no room left to change the ending, let me tell you something true. You can leave, even if you're older than you thought you'd be. Even if the world tells you it's irresponsible or strange, you can still leave. Not to chase a dream, but to stop pretending. You don't have to justify it. You just have to want it badly enough to begin again. It's not too late. Not if you're still here. Not if you're still listening. I didn't leave because I had some grand vision. I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I was finally honest. I looked at my life and realized I was no longer in it. I'd become a version of myself I didn't recognize, and I couldn't lie to myself anymore. That's what did it. Not courage, honesty. And sometimes that's all the freedom we ever really need, just to say, this isn't me anymore, and then slowly, gently, to walk toward whatever is. That's how it begins. Not with a plan, but with the truth. Before you go, if this story stirred something in you, even something small, I hope you'll stay a little longer. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Like the video if it helped you feel seen. And most of all, leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever felt that quiet urge to walk away, not out of failure, but out of truth? What would it look like for you to stop performing and start living, even in some small way? This isn't just my story. It might be yours, too. Let's talk about it.